Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are doing a ranking video, a tier list video for most of, if not all of the trap decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I think are any kind of relevant. And there's even an argument that some of these aren't even any kind of relevant. But I love trap decks. One of my favorite style of decks to play. It just feels old. It feels classic, slower play style. But obviously, Konami's made newer trap decks with newer support that have been able to somewhat keep up in the meta, or with the meta, not in the meta necessarily. So today we're ranking all of them. Before we get into it, I think it's very important to note, nothing is going to be meta. There are no trap decks that are legit meta right now. I think there's a few that could fit into the legit rogue category, where like I do think you could top a regional. Outside chance of topping a YCS, probably not too likely, but still like a respectable deck. I think even meta players should be aware of these kinds of decks. Then there's rogue-ish, like fringe chance of topping a regional, but not like gonna, it'd be rare to see. But like, again, still like somewhat respectable, just not legit rogue. Then there's interesting, has some cool factors to it, but it's just not good enough. It's just outclassed by the other trap decks in the game and probably couldn't even top a regional. And then just god awful. These are just decks that are exactly how it sounds. So very, very cool. Let's jump into this thing. We got a lot of stuff to go through. Keep in mind, some of the archetypes we have here aren't necessarily trap decks, but you can absolutely play trap variants, and we've seen success with those, and those are going to be the variants we're talking about as far as where we're going to rank them in this video. So starting off here, we have Unchained. I think this is rogue-ish. I wouldn't put it in legit rogue right now. Just too dependent on destruction. The engine just gets outclassed by other, so many other engines in the game at this point. I think they're up for support. Konami has been in love as of late, the last couple core sets, with going back and giving 2 to 3 year old archetypes like new 1 or 2 cards of support that are actually really, really good for them. Look at Generator, look at Evil Eye that we just got from the last set that actually make them better rogue decks than they were before. Super cool, and I think Unchained fits that category. We've seen the trap variant, still could be solid, but I'd want to see some support before I could see them get to like legit rogue category. But they're still like they could steal some wins even from meta decks, but horrible tier matchup. Probably a decent sprite matchup, but other than that, pretty bad. Then we have Labyrinth. This is like obviously this is Konami's newest trap baby, and it is legit rogue. I think this is straight up the best trap deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. If you're going to play like a pure trap deck, like heavy trap deck, I think this is the best one you can play right now. Has a lot of good options. I like that it's open-ended in that you don't have to rely on your own removal. The deck synergizes with any trap that removes stuff from the field. So there's obviously a lot of good selections there, so you pick whichever ones are best in the current format, and that kind of allows the deck to be kind of flexible there. But yeah, it's cool. It has a really cool engine. It pluses like crazy. That's how you do it. You out advantage your opponent like crazy. I think it's a good legit deck. Machina. I think Machina's, man, I would put Machina in interesting. No, you know what? I think it's roguish. I can put it in roguish. Yeah, there's not much to say here. You just play like a small central Machina pack. You know what? I think it's bad. With Tier being the best deck in the game, a lot of this deck's removal is destruction based, which I hate. So, yeah, its engine pretty much just gets you to like a board wipe. And so if that's the case, Tier doesn't give a shit about this. So I think it's just okay. I don't think it's great, but I think it's still interesting enough. It still is going to have a couple of matchups here and there that it's pretty good against, but a lot of these are going to be dependent on, like, how do they match up versus Tier? Do they still get dinked on by Bestials? By the way, roguish, Unchained does kind of get hit pretty hard versus Bestials, so that's like another thing to keep in mind. Next up, we have our guys, our Magical Musketeers. I'm a huge fan of this deck. I think they're rogue-ish. I think they're one of those decks that, like, once they get set up, they're actually quite annoying to actually break through. Is it impossible? Definitely not. And also, like, this is a weird one because this deck, like, inherently plays, like, 3 to 4 trap cards of their own archetype, but they don't play a ton of traps outside of that, and they activate from hand, so they almost function as spells. Essentially just quick play spells on the opponent's turn, but it's a weird one, but I do think it can combine with Runic, which isn't a trap deck technically either, but it does still function like a control deck, so I think it's good enough to put on here, whatever. We're keeping it kind of loose there, but I'll keep it in rogue-ish. I think it does have, like, it has Dancing Needle, which banishes 3 cards from grave, which is decent versus tier. Other than that, it's got, like, spell and trap negation. It's got monster removal. It's got negation on the field. It's got a lot of really cool tools, including Max as well, to either bait negates or if it resolves, like, just let you run away with advantage and break boards. It's cool. I think it's a respectable deck in rogue-ish, but not legit rogue. Magispector. Magispector is just god-awful. This deck, all the monsters say, like, add a card on, like, summon. But unfortunately, like, they just... all the trap cards you can add, all the spells and traps that are interruption and removal that you can add, like, tribute to Magispector. So you always give up a card to do the negation. So you have to, like, 2 for 1 your opponent there anyway. It seems like it pluses, but then it just doesn't. Plus, you have to play a ton of trap and spell names to search, but you don't really want to draw them. You just want to draw all Magispector cards, just pen some in a bunch, get a ton of pluses. But, like, because you have to play them, you're just going to draw some of them sometime. It's pretty bad. Yeah. Next up, we have ninjas. Ninjas are really interesting because specifically we're talking about a trap variant of ninjas. I'm going to put them in interesting. I do think the next set does make them a little bit better because they have traps that summon ninjas out of the deck and also the new monster that summons them out of the deck. And the new guy, when he's summoned, just, like, pops 2 cards. So, like, that's really, really good at helping the deck, like, have a payoff for that. But it still has, like, some consistency issues. It has big going second issues, especially if you're in a heavier trap variant. Still a cool deck, though. I think the combo variant's better. But maybe down the line, if we got, like, something new that, like, specifically was tailored for a trap variant specifically, there could be something cool there. But until we see it, I'm going to put in just interesting. I don't think it's quite roguish, the trap variant at least. Next up is Paleo. I'm going to put in roguish as well. You know what? I'm going to put Paleos in legit rogue. I think Dynamorphia is quite a house in this format. It's great versus tier. Plus, the best way to play Paleozoic right now is a Paleozoic tier variant, just because the tiers get you a ton of mills, milling the tiers, and, like, other trap cards that get value in grave, all really good value. So yeah, I think, like, borderline, it's like a tier variant, but I still think it's a good enough variant, and it has, you play, like, a full suite of Paleos. I'm going to count it. I'm going to put it in legit rogue. I think it's actually quite respectable. I'm going to speed up a little bit going through the rest of these. I'm taking a little too much time here. Phantasm Spiral. It's interesting, not good enough. The deck doesn't have strong enough interruption inherently to make it worth, but you can play a ton of insane floodgates in this deck, so it's interesting. I doubt you could see it top a regional nowadays. I mean, maybe you'd take, like, a special day to make it happen, but it could win a locals for sure. So yeah, I'll put it in interesting. Stellarknight's interesting. You know what? Fuck it. Stellarknights are god-awful right now. They are so slow. They are so one-note. They need a boost to their engine. They need a way to make Trevere going second easily, right? So that they can actually threaten boards via their engine. They also need a way to, like, search Stellar Nova Alpha turn 1 so they can at least get to an interruption turn 1. That's what they need, is they just need speed. They need to be able to do stuff first turn. And if they do, I think they could actually be something interesting. But until they do, no hope for them. Shaddoll's I'd put in rogue-ish. I would put them in legit rogue, except, like, they are just, like, they were the dominant trap deck in the game. They were, even when they were bounced down to rogue, they were still, like, the premier fusion trap deck in the game. And, like, tiers just outclassed them. It just has. They float better. They mill better to get you into the floats. Their engine is just entirely outclassing Shaddoll's entirely. So I'd love to see them be good. I think they can, like, potentially top a regional if you were, like, really feeling it and had, like, a great build, but not much more than that. Altergeist. I'll put Altergeist in legit rogue. I think it's good enough. It's classic Altergeist. I don't really need to say too much about them. Solid engine. Play a couple bricks, but it works out. They have they rotate. Once they get going, unstoppable. So True Draco, I'm going to put it interesting. I don't even think they're rogue-ish. I just think they have such huge weaknesses. Evenly matched, you lose the game. Harpy's Feather Duster, you lose the game. Any of those, like, big cards. And a lot of these cards can be, like, in trouble, but man, this deck just, it doesn't do enough. Before, just setting up, like, one of the one of the Draco Slay or one of the True Draco monsters with like 2 or 3 back row, you could win a duel. And you can win a duel here and there, but decks are just better. They have access to outs, to back row, to floodgates and stuff like that. Because of Mind's been in the game, people have to play them. And so like this deck just doesn't have the leg up that it had before. Yeah, I don't even think it's roguish right now. Seriously. Subterrors I would put in roguish, though. I don't think they're legit rogue. I know I saw one top of regional the other day, but that's like the first one I've seen in a minute. And like they have to rely on Dragoon, which I don't love, just as like a purist. I'd love to see Subterrors actually get support so that they can just play more as like an actual deck instead of just being like Guru, Search Fiendus, the engine. Just set up an Omni Negate to protect your floodgates, because that's just super annoying. But yeah, still roguish because of the tools it has. Amazement, interesting. I think they have some cool pieces. Arlecchino's awesome. They have like 2 or 3 of their traps that are actually interesting. The normal summon's not terrible, but it needs more. It definitely needs more. They need like a nice wave, like a big wave to actually push them, but till they get it, they're just meh. Lair of Darkness, also an interesting. I don't think they're roguish. I'd love to see them get there. I keep singing this. Can we just get a trap that can like either activate Lair from deck like Metaverse, or like special summon a Lady of Lament? Like give it an effect that says do one or the other. Special summon a Lady of Lament straight from the deck, or activate Lair. Would be amazing. It would be so huge for consistency. It would make Lilith able to get you access to Lair, which is huge. Yeah, it'd be really, really nice. But until then, still interesting. But I do think there is light at the end of the tunnel. This does have an opening to become one of the like respectable rogue trap decks in the game. Eldlich, I'm going to put in roguish just to respect what this engine has been and has provided for so long. But in this format, it is dog shit. It is so bad. You cannot play versus Bestials. They'll destroy you. And even more so, the Ishizus will destroy you as well. So yeah, this deck just gets bodied by that matchup. So yeah, really bad. Cyber Dragon, I'll put Cyber Dragon Trap still in roguish. Both Tier and Sprite like to make links right now, so going second, being able to like contact Fuse to clear part of the board while also searching the trap card. I know the trap's not particularly great versus Tier because it destroys, but it's still a solid card. I think it has like a decent Sprite matchup, and obviously, you would play traps to help kind of cover the Tier matchup a little bit there. I still think it's respectable. I still think if you like Cyber Dragon, if you're playing a pure Cyber Dragon deck, I think traps still might be the best variant you can play, but that's pretty much where it ends off there. We'll put, I guess we'll put Darklords in awful. I don't even know if they're interesting. Like, I have not seen anybody make anything cool out of this deck in a long while. I mean, maybe, you know what, just for respect for Darklords, because they've had a good past, we'll put them here. They're definitely better than these two right now, because they just do more, but they don't plus enough, it kind of seems. But at least being able to, copy the trap effects. And they do have some powerful things. They have the new fusion ball, well, new, a couple of years old, but new fusion boss monster that's kind of like a tower, is annoying to out. Sarah is an interesting one. So Sarah I will put in legit rogue. I don't know this for sure yet. We only have the first 4 cards for the structure deck revealed. I think they help tremendously. And I know we should be getting 2 to 3 more cards revealed in the next month. Literally, that's when it's coming out in the OCG. I have faith that Traptrix will be a legit rogue strategy. At that point, I think the biggest concern, just going second. You got to be able to play enough stuff that helps you go second while also maintaining what makes the deck really strong going first. And I think if we can do that, we'll be good, but we'll have to see what the rest of the cards look like for the support to see if there's any help there to make that come to fruition. But I still think this is a really solid strategy. I think it could be. We'll just have to see. Yeah, Dynamorphia, definitely a legit rogue. I know it sometimes is like matchup dependent for the format. Sprite has starter and other ways, like so they can just out your Rex term, which is really annoying. And Tier has stuff like Soliix, they can just like negate the Rex term and trigger stuff in grave. Plus, like Tiers are just triggering stuff in grave left and right, so your Rex term isn't really stopping that, so they can still play under it somewhat. Which is really annoying. They can, through the Bestial engine, get access to Druisworm, and then Druisworm, summon him and then get him sent to grave to out the Rex term. It's really annoying, but I still think for what it is, you have to respect the power of just one of their cards equaling a walking skill drain. So, yeah. And the last one here is Dragon Maid, sorry. I'm going to put it in Roguish. Normally, Dragon Maid fits in the legit Rogue category, but I'll be honest, I think the best variant of Dragon Maid is a little bit more not hyper offensive, but you play the Bestials as a secondary engine. You only really play the mandatory trap cards for the engine, but outside of that, you kind of just go in on hand traps. I think the actual heavy trap variant is okay, but it's just outclassed. Plain and simple. The Bestials are too good not to play as a secondary engine here. And so because of that, I think you could still have like a coolish roguish level deck with Dragon Maid with like a bunch of traps, but I think you're better off playing like the actual more combo mid-range variant instead of just the heavy stun like control variant. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There may be a couple of other trap decks that I didn't include here because I just thought they weren't relevant enough or they didn't really qualify just the way they're played normally. But for the most part, this was everything that I felt like was important enough. These are my legit rogues. 5 different ones. I think that's still pretty decent. So hopefully there's a couple of good options there if you are a trap player and you were just looking for what options do I have right now that I could try to compete with. I think Labyrinth is great. I think tier is interesting. The tier paleo list is interesting. It just, the problem with it is now so many other players are playing tier, and it's like a deck where you put a bunch of stuff in grave. So if you're not playing Ishizu cards, but you play against a layer or a tier Ishizu deck, and they're just going to give you a ton of trouble being able to use the Ishizus to like put a bunch of your trap cards that would give you value back into the deck. So it can kind of counteract you a bunch, and then their engine's just stronger, faster than yours at that point. It's kind of tough in that matchup specifically, but I do think versus almost anything else in the game, it's still like a respectable trap deck. Altergeist is Altergeist. You know, they're going to struggle going second, but, you know, they've got some really cool tools. Traptrix, we'll see what the rest of the support is, but I even think with the support we have now, they could arguably be a legit rogue deck. And then Dynamorphia, it really just depends on the format. If we see a significant hit to tier, this deck immediately becomes like a lot more interesting. But right now, right this second, it may not be quite amazing, but I do think, it's got such a powerful engine and powerful payoffs that it could be in an interesting spot at any moment in time. So definitely keep an eye on it, as well as some of these. Like some of these are waiting on support. I would say Unchained. I would say Subterror, right? Kind of waiting on support. Maybe even like Cyber Dragon as well, if they could get another card or two to help their engine. They could jump up. But for now, I still think they're fun. They're solid, but not quite as solid as that legit rogue. And then everything else is just interesting, really needs help. But we'll obviously see where those end up going. But there you go. There's my tier list for the trap decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now and how they can fare in the competitive scene. These are just my thoughts, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. Is there any disagreements you have on any of these? Would you move them up, move them down? Let me know down below. Curious to hear your thoughts there. And let me know your thoughts on like what trap deck you're looking at this format. If you are said trap player, I'd love to hear what you guys are looking at, because I'm always looking for a trap deck to have fun with. Right now I'm about to rock with Labyrinth pretty hard, but we'll see. They've even got another card coming out in Photon Hypernova, which makes them even better. I think they'll be the best trap deck going forward for quite a bit, but we'll see. I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me down the line. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.